Hello everyone, welcome to Diplomatic Briefing. As tensions rise between China and Japan over remarks by Sanai Takaichi, Chinese and US leaders had a phone call. Xinhua News Agency reports that on the evening of November 24th, President Xi Jinping spoke with US President Trump. President Xi said that last month they met in Busan, South Korea, reached important agreements, and this has helped China-US relations move forward, set the right course, added momentum, and sent a positive signal to the world. Since the Busan meeting, China-US relations have stayed stable and are moving positively, which is welcomed by both countries and the international community. This shows again that cooperation between China and the US benefits both, while confrontation harms both, a truth proven in practice. The achievements and shared prosperity between China and the US are real and visible. Both sides need to keep this momentum, follow the right direction, uphold equality, respect, reciprocity, expand cooperation, and reduce disputes. There should be more positive progress to create new space for cooperation in China-US relations so as to better benefit the people of both countries and the people of the world. President Xi also reiterated China's principled position on the Taiwan issue, emphasizing that Taiwan's return to China is an important part of the post-war international order. China and the US once fought side by side against fascism and militarism, and now, even more so, should jointly safeguard the hard-won outcomes of World War II. As for Trump, he said that President Xi Jinping is a great leader and that he and President Xi have. The one-on-one meeting was very pleasant, and he completely agreed with President Xi's views on the relationship between the two countries. Both sides are fully implementing the important consensus reached at the Busan meeting. China played an important role in the victory of World War II. The US side understands the importance of the Taiwan issue to China. The two heads of state also discussed the Ukraine crisis. President Xi emphasized that China supports all efforts dedicated to peace and hopes that all parties will continue to narrow their differences and reach a fair and lasting solution as soon as possible. How can a binding peace agreement resolve this crisis at its root? China criticized Sanai Takaichi's remarks about the need for military intervention in the Taiwan Strait, saying that this is the first time since World War II that Japan has posed a military threat to China, and accused Sanai Takaichi of undermining the international order established after World War II. The content of the call between the Chinese and US leaders carries deeper meaning. First, after Trump returned to the White House, this was the first such call, and it was not initiated by the Chinese side at the request of the US side. This time both sides had matters to discuss. Second, President Xi asked the US to support the fight against fascism and militarism, meaning he wanted the US to back China in opposing Sanai Takaichi's remarks, or at least stop supporting Japan and other opposing forces. Third, Trump also needed China's support, hoping China would, through its media, back the US on peace in Ukraine. In conclusion, when China and the US agree, it will be very difficult for Sanai Takaichi to have her way. Now, spokesperson Mao Ling responded by saying that China has taken note of Japan's recent mention of its consistent position on the Taiwan issue. She questioned what exactly Japan's so-called consistent position entails and demanded that Japan fully and publicly clarify its stated position. She said that if Japan only keeps repeating that its position hasn't changed, but fails to specify the details and continues to cross the line in its actions, then such reiterations are just empty talk, serving only to blur and hollow out the One China principle. Mao Ning stated that the One China principle is a firm consensus in the international community. If Japan's stance on Taiwan truly remains unchanged, it should clearly follow the One China principle, uphold the spirit of the four China-Japan political documents, and honor its commitments, including the 1972 China-Japan Joint Statement, in which Japan recognized the People's Republic of China as the only legitimate government of China. The government of the People's Republic of China reiterates that Taiwan is an inalienable part of the territory of the People's Republic of China. The Japanese government fully understands and respects this position of the Chinese government and insists on adhering to the stance of Article 8 of the Potsdam Proclamation. So why can't the Japanese side fully and accurately reaffirm these positions? We urge the Japanese side to take China's solemn demands seriously. They must reflect on and correct their mistakes, fulfill their commitments to dialogue, and not persist in their errors. They must not say one thing and do another. China means that if Sanae Takaichi does not retract her statements, China will not accept it. The reason is to set an example for the international community. China's position on the One China principle cannot be hollowed out. It is foreseeable that China will also demand other countries not follow Japan's example by making ambiguous statements while declaring their intention to intervene militarily in the Taiwan Strait. China will take countermeasures. In fact, although the Japanese side claims verbally that they want dialogue, in practice they continue to provoke. On November 23rd, Japanese Defense Minister Shinjiro Koizumi inspected the ground self-defense force on Ishigaki Island and Yonaguni Island, both near Taiwan. At the press conference following the inspection, he stated that the planned deployment of surface-to-air missile units on Yonaguni Island is progressing rapidly according to schedule. At a routine press conference, the Chinese side responded by saying that Japan's actions are deliberately creating regional tensions and provoking military confrontation. Connecting this to the erroneous remarks made by Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi regarding Taiwan, this development is extremely dangerous and should raise high alert among neighboring countries and the international community. Meanwhile, the official account of the PLA News Communication Center, China Military Voice, once again issued a warning to Japan in Japanese, stating that if Japan stubbornly persists in its mistakes, all countries and peoples who uphold justice have the right to re-examine and settle accounts for Japan's historical crimes, and have the responsibility to resolutely prevent them. With the resurgence of militarism, there are signs that China is intensifying its countermeasures against Japan. As of the morning of November 24th, 12 China-Japan flight routes had already cancelled all flights. According to data provided to Observer Network by the flight management platform DAST, the cancellation rate for planned flights to Japan in the coming week will reach 21.6% on November 27th, the highest in a month. Previously, the British Guardian reported that hundreds of thousands of Chinese tourists had cancelled their trips. Travel to Japan is having an impact on Japan's economy and tourism industry. Visa processing and cultural exchanges between the two countries have been suspended. Japan's tourism, entertainment, and retail stock markets continue to decline. According to some data, what's the situation now? At Tokyo Narita Airport, bookings for China-bound flights have dropped by 65% in a single day, and the vacancy rate at hotels in Kyoto, Nara, and other places that rely on Chinese tourists has soared to 70%. Many tourists are handling cancellations. After handling the cancellation and changed procedures for their trips, tourists are switching their bookings to other travel destinations. Foreign media have also paid attention to Sanae Takaichi's performance at the G20 summit, an international occasion. Aside from the strong refusal of contact from the Chinese side, Sanae Takaichi made a special effort to show her interactions with Western leaders. For example, Italian Prime Minister Meloni and Sanae Takaichi shared a warm embrace. Bloomberg described the two as having a particularly eye-catching close interaction. The report said that these two female politicians, both with a strong populist streak, have a lot in common. They both came to power on the back of conservative political platforms. In these two countries, leaders' terms often don't last more than a year, but now Meloni has already been in office for over 3 years, while Takaichi's term has just begun, only about a month so far. Not only has Sanae Takaichi behaved frivolously, repeatedly embarrassing herself in diplomatic settings, but she has also made erroneous remarks regarding Taiwan. This has affected China-Japan relations. Bloomberg noted that while Sanae Takaichi appeared to adjust her approach at the G20 summit, interacting more formally, Esteves Abe, associate professor of political science at Syracuse University, says that for Takaichi, keeping good relations with both China and the US is her main diplomatic challenge. Esteves Abe added that, given the Trump administration's unpredictable policy decisions, Japan cannot afford the cost of damaging its economic relationship with China. Bloomberg had already analyzed on November 17th that less than a month after Sanae Takaichi took office, she touched on China's red lines and faced a major diplomatic test, but she didn't have any effective way to stop China's countermeasures. The report, citing analysts, noted that China's reaction was extremely strong and warned that it might take further retaliatory actions, but these are all. After careful consideration for Takaichi, the risk lies in the possibility that China's pressure on Japan's economy and businesses could exceed expectations, especially since Japan's auto industry heavily relies on key minerals supplied by China. This is also one of the most explicit means of leverage China holds. According to Bloomberg, with former German Chancellor Merkel having exited the diplomatic stage, Meloni has become one of the few active female politicians on the international scene, and now Takaichi has also joined their ranks. Before heading to South Africa to attend the G20 summit, Sanae Takaichi candidly admitted that she was under public scrutiny and revealed that she had to spend several hours choosing her outfit. She needed to avoid looking cheap, but also wanted to prevent others from underestimating her. She posted on the X platform saying, "I will wear the same coat and dress suit that everyone has already seen. I might need to find some clothes that can give me an advantage in diplomatic negotiations." Bloomberg described this kind of statement as unusual for a national leader. This is truly rare, but Takaichi once again embarrassed herself on the international stage. On November 22nd, the 20th G20 Leaders Summit was held in Johannesburg, South Africa. Video footage from the scene shows that Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi arrived late, entering the venue about an hour after the summit had already started. By that time, the other national leaders attending had already taken their seats. According to Bloomberg, although she still lacks diplomatic experience, Takaichi has already participated in 3 such events not long after taking office. The summit activities included the ASEAN Summit, the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation (APEC) Summit, the Group of 20 Summit, and also hosting US President Trump's visit to Japan. It's worth noting that although she has generally maintained consistency in her diplomatic rhetoric, her communication style is far too attention-grabbing. For example, during the ASEAN summit, Sanae Takaichi actually dragged her chair over, trying to get closer to Indonesian President Prabowo. At the APEC summit, she even put her arm around Chilean President Boric's shoulder and engaged in conversation. When facing Australian Prime Minister Albanese, she even leaned directly on the edge of the conference table. These frivolous gestures and actions have also sparked controversy within Japan. And at this Group of 20 summit, her enthusiastic hug with Meloni, while French President Macron standing nearby treated Sanae Takaichi as if she were invisible, even making a rather awkward expression. Bloomberg's analysis pointed out that although these informal interactions highlight Sanae Takaichi's signature style, it would be much more meaningful if she could actually engage with the Chinese side. As foreign media have analyzed for Japan, while the US and China are easing tensions, Japan is already bearing the economic pressure from US tariffs. In such a situation, to also fall out with China is not the behavior expected of a mature politician. Now let's take a look at Meloni, this right-wing political figure. Being able to hold the position of Prime Minister for 3 years is not because she is anti-China enough or because of her distinctive expressions or her flamboyant statements on the international stage. On the contrary, after taking office, even under immense pressure from the United States, she has still managed to maintain contact and a certain degree of substantive cooperation with China. This is the real reason she has been able to successfully hold on to her position.